Brittany King, it's been 1 year since you were here. So what's happened this last year? How do you think the year's gone?
Has it been a year? Time flies.
Yeah, it was December 9th last year.
You're kidding me. So
No.
it's exactly a year later?
Yeah, I got the readout. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
1 year today.
That's meaningful. That's divine timing.
Wow.
Okay. So how did the year go?
The year has been a whirlwind. It has flown by A lot has happened in 365 days. I recently developed a magazine called Yellow Seeds Magazine. And it's pretty much the essence of my podcast that I was talking about last time, American Shade with Brittany King. It's a place where I have nonpartisan viewpoints come on and they discuss their ideas, but through prose. And the question that they have to ask is why. And they come on this online publication and not as like necessarily an expert, but someone that's just curious about the topic at hand of what they want to explore. So that's been a lot of fun. Right now, I have like 6 or 7 essays. Eric was one of the first people that came on with his essay, Why Are We So Afraid of Clowns? Which clowns, he's talking about comedians, and he's talking about the whole Dave Chappelle debacle, the whole Chris Rock and Will Smith Oscar moment, which was a stellar essay, which I really loved. We also had a conversation about that. So yeah, a lot's
Thank you.
happened. And I'm just getting more in depth of this cultural conversation about what's going on in America. And it seems like we still need to figure out that answer.
Do you think within the conversation, do you think things have changed? Do you think people's appetite for nonpartisan communication is increasing and they're shifting from the polarities?
That's a good question. I guess reality is what your perspective is. I think sometimes I feel like people are more open and people are kind of nudging themselves to the middle and trying to cross the binary line and seek out viewpoints that they normally wouldn't. But then I think when I talk to other people and then when you get on Twitter, it's like that reality shifts to like, maybe people aren't as open-minded as I thought. Maybe things aren't really turning in the way I was envisioning. So that's a good question. I feel like I'm having more conversations with people doing that, but I don't know if large scale, if that's what the reality is. What's your thoughts?
Right. Right. I mean, it does seem like there's absolutely, as you indicated, a distinction between social media and real life conversations. I would say in the real life conversations, there's more reason, there's more respect, there's more of a holistic attempt to understand alternative points of view. And online, all of that gets crushed into a more brutal sort of environment where it's, as you said, very binary. So I think that's the most meaningful distinction. And as you're saying, I agree that because there's different levels of reality in different places where communication takes place, it's kind of hard to track the overriding sentiment.
Exactly. And though I am still optimistic, and I think last time I was talking about just staying optimistic and not really allowing, like, definitely like things like Twitter and social media get inside my head too much and kind of focusing on what's happening in real time in my life. I feel like the interpersonal relationships really hold more weight than online relationships, whether it's positive or not, because more so if you're having a discussion with someone or you are having a debate that's getting heated, more likely that debate wouldn't have gotten heated if you were in person. Most conversations I have with people in person, even if it's someone that I literally disagree on all fronts, do not get heated like that. But online, just that absence of seeing that person eye to eye allows you to attack them like they're an archetype of what you think they are. So I just look at my life and and that's what keeps me optimistic. And being on social media kind of negates that a bit. So I try to stay off social media as much as I can, unless I need to be on there. Unless I'm talking to you, Eric.
Yeah, I know it. I know it. Well, with Yellow Seeds, what was the appeal of essays? Like, why was that form of communication appealing to explore these nonpartisan perspectives?
Well, I love, like, essays is my, like, jam. I love to write essays to get out my thoughts, whether it's like a 500-word essay or 2,000, 3,000-word essay. I haven't tackled a book at all yet, which I want to, but that's just like so daunting. I want to talk about it. We'll table that for later. But essays have always been something I love. And also essays has been like the thing I love to read most. I like to read, of course, I like to read books. I like to read books of essays. Like I love reading James Baldwin's book of essays. I love reading the New Yorker. I love reading, the Atlantic and all those other things. And that's why I wanted to take on essay forms. I feel like the word count constraint that I even have, like 700 to 800 words, allows someone to like have breath to say what they need to say, but have them also need to simplify what they're saying so that the reader can understand it too, and that it's not too drawn out. Sadly, well, I don't know if it's, no, I will say sadly, because I was about to say, well, maybe it's not a bad thing, but it kind of is. We have just become a very audio world, a podcast world, where people want to even hear essays on the New Yorker or on the Atlantic. They even have a feature where you can listen to the essays as if it is a podcast. You don't have to read it, which is convenient if you're like driving. So I understand that. Also, if you can't hear, that's also the feature there, or if you can't see. But I feel like 700 and 800 words is like a sweet spot for people to be able to, one, communicate what they have to say, and for someone to want to read through what they have to say without feeling like it's a task. So, but I know your piece, which we allowed, we as in you and I, it was a little longer. I think it was probably like no, but it needed to be like, it needed all of those words. So sometimes, not every essay is exactly 700, 800 words. I think the last one I have is probably even 1,200 words, but he was talking about a confrontation that he had during Thanksgiving, and where he came in thinking he had all the answers when he was like 20 something. And he's just talking about a moment that happened 15 years ago with his family, and realizing in that moment, after he got to an argument, a very, very heated argument that turned into an explosion, that he realized he shouldn't have treated his family member like he would treat someone on Twitter. He realized because they have a different point of view doesn't mean they can't literally sit down and break bread and eat together. So his essay was why I don't avoid politics, but I avoid polarization during Thanksgiving. Totally messed up that whole sentence. That's not it. I'm paraphrased, but his essay needed all of what he said. So he talks about that. He talks about reflecting on that moment, how he's learned from it, how he wrote a book about listening to different point of views. And then he just gives some tips of how he's been able to take on that and use that without his life. So some essays aren't that, but I just feel every essay on here is very different. They take it on in their own way. Most of them, or all of them, are writers or journalists, or like you, screenwriter. So it's not like there's rookies, which I do. Like, I'm so up for people just taking a whack at it. If you are an aspiring writer and you want to pitch, I am so for that. I think I'm working with someone that's kind of up and coming, but most of these essays are kind of like seasoned people that have written before. And I'm just excited about where this is going. This has been, a long time in the making. This has been something, and I need a shout out, Rod Hare, what up? He and I, it's a long story, but he has been a real beacon of support with this. And I couldn't have done this without him. I couldn't have done this without his team with Nuance Forum. And this is like a dream. And to some people, you know, it's just like a little publications right now. But to me, I'm having so much fun working with these writers. I'm having so much fun being in the editor seat. This is something I wanted to do since I was 16, be an editor. And yeah, I'm not the editor of the New Yorker, but dang it, I'm the editor of Yellow Seeds. I'm pretty excited about it.
That's awesome. I thought you were a really terrific editor. I remember something I pointed out to you while we were working together was it was almost like you have a visual sense of it in terms of moving paragraphs around. Like if we move this piece up here and move that piece down there, the line of argument will sort of be leveraged in a different way. And it was you know, I've worked with so many editors on so many forms of writing that it was very illuminating to see how you approached it. And I think overall, the big takeaway, as it always is when we talk, whether it's, you know, publicly or privately, like you're really engaged in the substance of what's being said.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so glad that you were so open to my suggestions and my edits, because I guess, I don't know if I like prefaced, I was like, what is going to be returned to you in regards to edits is going to look crazy, but just trust me. And you completely trusted me with how I jigsawed things around and how I was like, this should go here and the bottom paragraph should go up. And the fact that you're just so open to it made the process even more fun.
Oh, awesome.
And I mean, that piece is yours, but that piece is so good. I tell everyone about that piece and then you read it, and the people that read it say it's really great. So
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and it was a great collaboration, and I think yeah, I've run into that with editors because I tend to try and be wire tight, and everything is like, you know, very much sculpted and carved together. And when I saw that you were like taking the engine apart to reassemble it, I was like, man, where's this going to go? But you completely, in the end, I was like, wow, you really brought the nectar out of it. Like it's all there, and I thought it was beautiful. And I think it's just exciting to think about other writers and all different levels of experience, from new writers to ones that are more seasoned, having that sort of experience. I think it sort of exemplifies the theme of the magazine in a way, because there's an openness and an exploration in terms of consciousness.
exactly. And also, like, I know we've had a lot of relationships with editors, and editor has our own way of doing things, but I'm also very open though. I'm like, okay, here's my edits, but also if you really need this in there completely, you can, you know, challenge me on it. It's not a dictatorship, but I only edit because I believe in the piece. I'm only doing it because I just see like this actually just makes this part of what you're saying even more, just have more weight. So yeah, it's been fun. And every writer I've had a great experience with, and yeah, so I'm excited for more.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you really are an example, and this is why I always enjoy talking to you. You practice what you preach, so to speak, in terms of, you know, there's a real openness and receptiveness and listening to the perspective, whether it's somebody who's in a different spot from you in terms of their opinions, or it's the writer you're working with and that you're helping to bring their own voice out. And I'm curious, and I might have asked you this at some point along the way, but contextualized within Yellow Seeds, what is it exactly that leads you to this framework in which you're, you know, seeking to bring people together, to not be binary or divergent in perspectives, and to, you know, to humanize all of us? And I want to highlight in asking this question that a lot of journalists are ideologically captured on one side or the other. And you see, I mean, sometimes their work can be excellent, but there's a clear ideological capture, and it's like, you always know they're going to be coming from that place and playing to that crowd. But I found you, when we met, very refreshing, because you're not doing that. And I'm just wondering how you arrive there within yourself.
That is so loaded, and an awesome question.
Yeah.
And an awesome. I want to say Orwell said this, but I almost feel like maybe it was Janet Malcolm. Anyone, you can at me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
But Orwell or Janet Malcolm said that journalists are PR for the truth. Like, that's what a journalist is. Like, that they're not supposed to be, you know, only amplifying one side of a story. That's literally the antithesis of journalism. And I think that's why you and I lean independent, because I think we see that.
Mhm.
Why I want to do this magazine is because of everything you said. The reason why we're so polarized is because people do look at each other as archetypes of a political lining, of one thing that they believe. And we're just more complicated than that. And it's so condescending to think a human is just one thing, that they're just a Republican, they're just
Mhm.
a Democrat, and that's it. And that because of who they voted for or who they didn't vote for, you're like, okay, I know everything about you because of this one act. Like, it's just not that way. And
Right.
more often than not, I just see when people have a thought, a disagreement with another person on the other side, so to speak, when I see both of these people talking about what they believe, I'm like, if they both just got together and had a conversation, they would really see that they kind of stand for the same thing, but they just see it from two different angles, and they think there's two different routes to kind of get to the same common goal. So for right now, I
Mm.
won't disclose their names because it's coming out, but I have two friends, and I think by the time this comes out, actually their pieces will be out. So, I have two friends, and I've been seeing them in their own pockets discussing this issue, and they do know each other. They're just my friend. And one of my friends, she's progressive, and I met her at NYU in grad school for journalism, and she lives there right now. She's a journalist working up there, and she is a proponent for the Latinx term. And then my other friend, he's in the Latino community, and he's a
Okay.
proponent for the Latino term, and believes there's historical value there. She believes
Mhm.
there's progressive value in Latinx. They both actually wrote pieces on why they're for what they believe in different years, but I read both. And I wanted last year to have them come together and have a talk on American Shade. But then I realized I don't know if that's my place as someone that's not in that community, as a Black American. I was like, I don't even know how I could like facilitate this in a way where I won't seem like I'm in the way. I feel like this could be a conversation that they just have. So the next set of essays I have, after an essay I publish next week, I have them write 700, 800 words on why they're for Latinx or why they're for the Latino term. And so they each write that. Right now, they're in the process of responding to each other. So each of them got each other's essays, and now they're responding to each other in an intimate way, almost like a pen pal thing that they're going to then give to me, and it's going to be publicized. So the first week will be their stances, and it's going to be published together. The next week is going to be their responses to each other's stances, and everyone can read it. And then the third week is going to be them having the conversation on yellow seeds, and where I'll be there, but it's mostly going to be them just meeting up and just talking. Because at that point, they've both been in this process together where they wrote something they're passionate for, and then they read something that someone else was passionate about, and they've already met, but through prose. So I want to open up the conversation with just, how did it feel, responding to someone that you've never met, and responding to someone just through words, now getting to see them face to face, and then them just having the discussion on their own. And what I hope happens is that they both just see that, which I got from both of their pieces, is that they are so, in such a beautiful way, prideful of their community, of their heritage, of their traditions, and they both love who they are, and they both have great pride in that, and they just want the best for their community. They just see it two different ways, and that's all I want them to see. And it's not to say I want you to change your mind and change your mind. It's that you can both have different point of views and still see the value in your point, and then see the value in someone else's point. So that's what I'm hoping this happens with this. And by their essays was so thoughtful and so considerate, which is a premise for even pitching to Yellow Siege. Like, I don't allow any like hostile arguments against a political party, no matter the political party. There's no ad hominem attacks that keep you in your prose. There can't even be too much like profanity usage, because that just, might get people intense when they're reading it. You just have to have a clear understanding of why you're exploring the topic you are, and stand on why you're exploring it and what you think, versus leaning on going against a side to make your case. You should be able to make your case without attacking the side, which right now we see that in a lot of essays. It's just people say, I'm for this because this side sucks, and they just go after that side, versus what were you actually for? I never even got what the pros is to what you are thinking. All I got was the cons, and you just completely shattered sides for what? So I'm just sick of those essays, and I think people have more to give than that. And that's why I went to Yale State. It's because I want to just show people, one, we're complicated, and two, that there's just more to the story than two sides. There's literally millions. So that's what I hope this online publication does.
That's really good, and particularly with the Latinx pair of pieces, and then the conjoining pieces and dialogue is a brilliant idea, and I think it's so refreshing, and there's such an appetite for it. And I think listening to you go through all that, something that crossed my mind is, I think something that's very common with arguing or debating and issues that are hot button and emotional is people from the get-go, out the gate, tend to presume that the other person is in bad faith. Like, I can't believe you really think that. Are you kidding? And I think there's so much of that because people are just ingrained in their own bubbles, and they have their own presumptions and assumptions just reinforced all day long. So to see somebody outside of it, and not only outside of it, but vocally or proudly so, it's like they can't. I find myself experiencing that all the time. It's like, wait a second, are they really serious, or are they messing with me?
Exactly.
Particularly if it's really ideological. Like, I feel a bias that kicks in. It's like, but they're just repeating something that they've heard, so this isn't legitimate. But I realize that, like you said, like, if I settle into it long enough, I do realize, number one, I'm dealing with an individual, and number two, like you said, they're complex. So as you start parsing it, there's going to be different levels of rigor and muscle to what they're saying, and it's usually way more complicated than it seems on first appearance.
Yes. And also, these people are just, like you said, regurgitating like a narrative they heard, but these people are also following commentators that are telling them the other side is in bad faith all the time. They're like, these commentators, these thought leaders, so to speak, are always telling them you can't trust that side. They're in, like, they are trying to make you the enemy. They're trying to make you like, so that's a whole nother monster. But yeah, people don't think, they think, what's the catch? Like, people just don't believe people can hold their own opinion and sincerely want to understand your opinion without having an agenda. It's like, I literally go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, going back to the Latinx thing, it was interesting just hearing that come up as a topic. And part of why I think it's brilliant you went there is because it is a topic that people get snagged on, and it can be divisive. And of course, I'm not part of that community, so I don't have a horse in the race. Although the first thing that crossed my mind when you brought it up is that it is a talking point or a statistic wheeled out by the right all the time that most people, I think it's north of 90 or 95%, within the Latin community either reject or have not heard of the term Latinx. And, that's a powerful thing. However, then, I always check, I hear that, so instantly my mind goes to that. But however, in the interest of critical thought, just because something's unpopular or not that well known yet doesn't mean it doesn't have its own substance or validity or float or meaning to the people that are in on it.
Exactly.
So, and I think the demonization can really occur within that. Because if you're like, well, most people don't like it, then you can start pointing at the minority that uses it or upholds it or is into it, and you can start making them into snobs or elitists or weirdos, and the whole thing just becomes so poisonous. But I also I try day to day to be cognizant of where my own biases are. It's like, like as I was hearing you, I was like, the first thing I thought of is that I know a lot of people reject the term, but that doesn't mean I do, and that doesn't mean one should. There's always more to it than that. There
is a lot more. After reading my friend's piece, I understood way more, because most of these conversations, especially with that topic, it's just a point of contention where there is no nuance. It's always a fight there, because I feel like that is something that really, is an example of where you politically align. If you're a Latinx, that means you're very left, or if you aren't for that, it means you're very right. And actually, these pieces were just balanced, and these pieces were really not political. Like, they just were just talking about why it matters or why it doesn't matter to them. But the thing about it is, in their pieces, they had the understanding of the other side inside their ethic. They would be like, oh, okay, I understand why someone would not be for this, or feel like there is losing its historical value if we say Latinx, but all I'm saying is it's just more inclusive and it's not losing it. We're just gaining more momentum. And then someone else saying, I understand why someone would want Latinx because they want progression, but we can keep our historical value with Latino and strive for progression, not change our lexicon for it. Like, it's just so much. It's like these pieces, I feel like I hope a lot of people read them, because, and I really hope that like someone that's like completely have a visceral reaction to the word Latinx reads my friend's piece and realizes, okay, I should just kind of chill. And actually, the next time someone else says for this, maybe I can then have a conversation and see that it's not so taboo just to talk to them about it. But yeah, it's just crazy that we've come to this point. I don't know if we've come to this point or we've always been at this point. And to me, it just is kind of showcased our ugly side. But yeah, it's crazy that we're at this point where we really can't talk about words. Like, we will fight over and physically fight over words. And it's sad. Also, this is very like random, but it just comes to mind. And I just want to get what you think. I really am annoyed, but I do this a lot. I think I said this in the last podcast on the show. I'm pretty sure I said that. I'm getting annoyed with, because it should just be, it doesn't need to be said, but when people are like, I don't believe everything they have to say, but I'm just really tired of that.
Oh, I know.
I'm
glad
annoyed.
You brought that up.
Yeah. And I know I said it, and I probably said it yesterday, but I'm just so annoyed. Like, I don't have to say I don't agree with everything. So of course I don't. I never have. I've never had to preface something and saying that.
I'm so glad you put that out there. And I know you put that on your social media platforms, that idea of like when somebody prefaces with, now I don't agree with everything this person says. I mean, yeah, that is, when I first saw you put that out there, I really responded to it, and it became a meme in my own mind too. And I haven't thought of it in a while, but you're so on point, because it's resolutely anti-intellectual. It's like, why would anybody's out the gate presumption be that because you consume somebody's content, you agree with everything they say? I mean, that's like a complete abnegation of your own individuality. It's not even possible, nor is it even possible to know everything they stand for. And the people themselves don't even know everything they stand for. So yeah, it's like a road to the dark places, the whole thing. And it's interesting. I always think my favorite filmmaker is Martin Scorsese, and his movies are so steeped in notions of Catholicism, and I'm Jewish, and I don't personally connect to them. Like, they're not part of my acculturation or formation. Like, it's just not, but I love his filmmaking, and I love the emotion and aesthetics and sensuality and music, and I feel that I'm able to live within it with my own interpretations, and there is also cultural overlap between where he's from and where I'm from. So, but like, it doesn't have to be an all-in thing. So it's really what the flip side of what you're saying with that sentiment is also when, like, there's a syndrome out there when somebody knows that you've consumed person X. Like if I mention I was listening to Joe Rogan, suddenly I'm an alt-right dude bro, like a pseudo-intellectual on steroids at the gym. It's like, no, I just actually just listened to it. Like that's like, please calm down. Like, yeah. And even just now, just citing that as the example, because of the cultural program, I'm a little embarrassed. I'm like, oh great, now people are going to do that anyway.
Exactly.
So yeah. It's a mess.
Yeah. It's like, it's exactly what you said. And it's like, you say it, like, but you almost have to say that to like safeguard yourself. And it's just sad. It's like,
you're so right.
It's not that, you should not have to say this, but you also know that, like, if you say, even if you said, I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast and I really liked the conversation he had with XYZ, and you literally only listen to him once, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we know exactly what the person is. And that's exactly why people do preface with, I don't agree with everything they have to say, because if they say they like someone's comedy, if they say they like someone's book, or they like this one thing, they know someone's going to assume that means that they're everything that person is too. So they almost got to be like, absolutely. But I am not that person. I disagree with this one point. That's what you're actually saying, Phil, or what we're saying when we say it.
Right. It goes back to what you were saying about archetypes and the danger of being cast as an archetype. Yeah. That you're going to be, suddenly you have to carry the load of that whole person's persona. And what's also interesting is in the inverse, at the other end of this, what you're describing, the phenomenon, is people are now mega popular because you're not allowed to say you like them on social media. So they've become like the new punks, because you can't go on Facebook and say, I love Chappelle without causing, and by the way, you and I have talked about this at length, Brittany, like that is not a simple thing to say, like, oh, I just love him. Because then suddenly you're endorsing him, right? So if I went on Facebook now and said I loved it, it was hilarious, whatever he did last, there was definitely there'd be unfriendings, there'd be arguments, but that's what he's doing. That's like the cultural function he's serving to get those. It's like his marketing. Then we all start marketing for him, and the people that aren't jumping into the pylon are watching like, oh, I better check him out. And that's why Chappelle is so famous right now. And he just gets bigger and bigger. And ditto Rogan, or ditto somebody like Jordan Peterson. It's because you're not allowed to say it. So they have like punk notoriety of a new sort. So now they live in spaces where like you go and you see their performances or you attend their thing, and it's like illicit because you're not supposed to. So that's like helping them be popular. So yeah, the whole thing is like, we've really like lost our minds. Like the whole thing is not grounded in a space of like mutual humanizing or seeing each other. And that's why I'm so excited that you're doing Yellow Seeds, because it cultivates that shared understanding and not reducing each other.
Exactly. And I think that it kind of just says, these people, well, one thing is I try to get people to just not really be political in their essays, because I know people will try to find a way in to fight what they're saying. But if they don't make it political and they're just saying what they think, then people really just have to sit there and listen. Like I'm not giving you any ammo.
Yeah.
Even though this person might like completely, be as far left as possible or right as far, whatever. Don't put that in your, just don't give people that chance to jump out of the essay or have a reason to tap out and be like, well, I'm listening to this because they said this one word. I remember I don't know who it was, but someone used the word woke in their essay in an arbitrary way.
Okay.
And I just told them in an arbitrary way, but they were like not going at it so hard, but it was kind of archetyping aside. And I said, I don't think you should put the word woke in there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you do, you're going to give someone an in to just fight you on that word and completely miss the other 800 words that you said. And
Good call,
so,
because go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh no, and that person, didn't even realize that they were doing that. It's just part of our cultural dictionary of just using these words to describe people. But really, I'm like, what are you actually saying? Go deeper than that word woke, because that word woke, that puts you on a side, even though you might not be on that side. You might actually be more aligned with who you're describing as woke. You just use that word to get across an idea, but based on who's reading it, someone can be really offended by that, or someone can be really for it and be for it in a way you might not like why they're for it.
Absolutely, yeah, very good call. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth in terms of the cultural piece, like that word, and there's other things like it, like cancel culture. Like there are terms that are like coins in the culture wars, and like as you're playing the game, they're like tokens that allow you to navigate, and they very much are signifiers in terms of where one stands, and they're also terms that have slid across the spectrum. Like woke started as awareness of systemic injustice and racism and was a Black term, and it's now been taken by not even by the right, but it's been taken by others, and it's been redefined to be a signifier of virtue signaling, online, being an online bumper sticker, being like very far left, and holier than thou and snobby and stuff. So now it's like you don't know, because it's slid and it's slippery, you don't know what one means when they say it necessarily, or where they're coming from. So it's too much to take on. And I wanted to say an interesting thing that happened with me as the writer and you as my editor is I do have a tendency, and it happened when we were talking to each other in the video interview too, where an antipathy comes up within me toward like, I don't even know what words to use to describe them because they're all traps, but let's for the moment say far left. Like, and it's amazing because in so many ways I'm one of them. I live in a multiracial home. I'm vegan. So many of my ideas are socialist ideas that I uphold. So that's why instantly you're in a trap saying, I don't like these people. And it's not that I even don't like them. I mean, these are a lot of my dear friends too. So it gets like and something you did that was so humanizing and helpful as an editor was when I called them the solemn in the piece, like people that aren't thrilled with comedians just getting up there and just bashing anyone. And, I love comedians. I mean, I think Al and I bonded on this show initially because I didn't feel he was ideologically captured either. Like he was just very open and it's anarchic and it appeals to me. But Brittany, you helped me not get snagged on my own bias. And I really appreciate the way the piece is because of that. And sometimes if I'm in a bad mood and the solemn are annoying me, I'm like, I can't believe that I let them off the hook. But for the most part, it's a transcendent choice that was made editorially to let them be human, let them have their perspective, and let it have legitimacy. Because otherwise, we're just like throwing middle fingers at each other, and it never stops.
Exactly, and that really speaks to your openness because I could tell when you were using those words. Yet you were using it in the best way. I know you're using the best way possible, but I was just looking at it from the devil's advocate of someone that doesn't know you. It might take this wrong. So let's just edit that. Let's take
right. Yeah. Let's
not
give them anything to hang me on.
Exactly. And no one has said anything like bad about your piece. Like everyone loves it. I mean, I'm talking about people that have scattered point of views, scattered political linings, and people that might not even like Dave Chappelle or might not like, Chris or Will or like even that. It's funny because when we did that piece, it was closer to when the Will and Chris slap happened. But when it got published, it was further along. But people saw relevance in what you're saying because one, your piece is evergreen, and two, you use those as jumping points and you didn't use them as punching bags. Like you didn't go for either side. You saw, the situation for what it was, but you also were like, there's just something bigger here happening. There's something bigger here happening beyond Will and Chris and Joe and Dave. And when you went back into history with the Jesters and you were talking about, we've always had comedy. for centuries. Like, this is what it does. This is what it is now. But this is why it's so important and necessary. People really looked at that and saw the.
Thank you. And I also think the idea of sides and there being something bigger at play, as you said, is completely the key and such a noble motive and theme for your magazine. Because fundamentally, there aren't really sides. Like, I think sides, whether it's like two sides of a given conflict or two sides of the aisle in the partisan sense, I think those are mental frameworks we use. They're like a form of shorthand we use to understand each other and to be able to communicate. But like, when push comes to shove, they don't exist. Like, they actually aren't real. So, and then everybody is now so invested in them.
Yeah. And I think that actually speaks to what you asked before. If our conversations are getting more nuanced, if people are getting more open, perhaps people are just understanding that point, that there really isn't two sides. I think that people are so staunch on that still, but I also think there's more people understanding that there's not like one black and white. It's like a spectrum of gray. And I might be on the binary side of an argument and I might think that it's right, but I might be more to the middle, light gray, and someone might be like very dark gray, if that makes sense of why they believe. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
like, all because I'm like, yeah, I'm for this. I don't know. I'm not even going to give an example because someone might.
Yeah, then it all starts. Yeah,
but let's
we'll all start yelling at each other.
Give something like not, something someone can fight on, which they probably will. Like, I like vanilla ice cream, and my reasoning, but I might like it. I don't know, 55%, and someone's like, I like it too, and it's like 150. Like, it's just different reasons why people are for things or not. And yeah, that's what LLCs is. There's no this side, that side, and their piece isn't for a side. Their piece is just giving their side of their point of view, and it's becoming like a collective of just, this person has this idea and this is their point of view, and they're not for any side. They're just getting deeper to a why of what's going on. Why are we having an argument in the first place? Which speaks to your piece of why are we so afraid of clowns. It wasn't like surface, like, let's talk about it in 2021 sense or 2022 sense. Like, no, let's go back to history of what this is for. And a lot of people have done that with their pieces of, even there's a woman who is a art historian, and she's a journalist and writer, and I believe she's from Canada. And she wrote a piece on the climate change protests and the protesters that were throwing tomato soup on Van Gogh and tomato soup on different art installations. And she was talking about, of course, what was happening, and even like gave grace to maybe why these people were doing this and didn't vilify them. But she also talked about the background and the history of Van Gogh and who he was and what that piece actually meant in his time, that he was dealing with depression when he did the sunflower piece, that actually brought light to him, that actually inspired him more to do painting, and that in the future, these people do a protest and thankfully don't destroy it because there was glass, but thought like, oh, it's just a piece, but didn't understand the historical value of that person and what that piece represented. So it really showcased, even I feel like a climate changer that might have been for that protest, I think if they read that piece, they would be like, oh, dang, there's a lot to this that I didn't understand. And that all because I have this idea about one situation doesn't mean you have to discard, a whole history of this. So yeah, I feel like all the pieces go deeper than just what's going on in America right now. And yeah, I could be biased because it's my magazine, but I also feel like that's really happening. I feel like these are actual seeds being planted, and what's growing is conversations around them. And I hope people take that on and it somehow grabs hold of them in their life, and they give people grace and really understand that we're complicated. And when I have that whole, I guess it could be seen as cliche, like humanize our complexities as people, but really, it sounds cliche, but no one's really doing it. Like no one is really
No,
doing that.
it's true.
So
It's not fashionable.
no, it's not trendy.
Yeah.
It's not really cool to see someone as a human. But hey,
Yeah, no, it's easier to malign the villain.
exactly. And it's always deeper. Like even that could be a piece of why people need to malign and have archetypes. And often when I see on Twitter, I just see people when they do that, when they're going so hard at someone, whether it be not a no one, but just like a normal pedestrian or whatever, patron, or a celebrity. I'm like, when I see how much time they have to go after someone, two, how deep they're going and like cutting the net. I'm like, are you fighting this person, or are you fighting someone in your life that you absolutely hate? Like I almost feel like people that go on Twitter when they fight just got done having an argument with like their husband or wife, and it's like, I'm gonna take out my anger on this person because I can't stand my wife.
Yeah.
Like I really feel like that, because I'm like, there is no way you should have that much venom for someone you don't know. It's just strange to me.
I agree completely. Yeah, and I think even on this show, I remember one of the guests, an author, referred to Twitter as an ongoing bar fight, and that's the exact same thing. Like you go to the bar, you know, you're leaving home behind, you just had a fight with your spouse. It's like, all right, who am I going to pick up?
That's
like,
literally that's so good. Yes.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I'd love to see that piece too about why we villainize, because when I'm in conversations where somebody's like super presenting and promoting an ideology and there's a clear bad guy in the picture, I'm always like squinting at the person like, I think I'm seeing somebody who's stuffing their wounds in front of me. Like, I think that's what I'm watching. It's like they have wounds, and this ideology helps them feel better, at least in the short term, at least to an extent. And this is really all that's happening. But the actual info dump portion of it has no political meaning whatsoever. It's like, well, I'm not learning anything. We're not fostering more peace or understanding against each other. So how is this, or with each other? So how is this productive?
Exactly. Yeah, and I feel like that even if I agree with someone on a topic, but if I see the only thing that they're giving me is how much they hate someone or hate something, then I'm like, what's going on here?
Right. That's a good point. I can't stand that either. Yeah, that's and it's tough. It's very tough. It's very much like the way human cognition works also makes navigating this tough at a granular level, because even right now, you and I, there's a drift that can occur where we can start saying those people, those ideologues, those narcissists, those people on Twitter, and then like they're not a homogenized group either. So that's, again, just another reason I think what you're doing at Yellow Seeds is so good, because it helps all of us be grounded around what can happen when we start like trying to navigate reality in terms of groupings, or, okay, I know that the threat is over there. That's why I'm staying away from Twitter. That's why I'm going to stay away from Fox News people, or that's why I'm going to stay away from leftists. And all of it is like completely counterproductive.
100%. Yeah. And when I refer to like Twitter, I don't even look at it as people.
Yeah. Good point.
Like I don't think people are present there. I think it's literally, I know we don't have time for it, but it's just a difference between a person and online presence.
Well said.
When you're online, you're not really you. That's what I feel like. I feel like most people are just not who they are, because I could say someone that I have talked to in person, it's just so lovely, but online, I mute them. I cannot follow them online.
Yeah.
Because they're a completely different beast. And it's like, so yeah, I believe the world or America isn't what Twitter looks like.
Yes.
But it's almost like the egg and the chicken. Like, does that create what we're seeing in the world? Or are we what Twitter is?
Right. Like Twitter's like a magnifying glass of sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we're all figuring it out. And one thing I know we're running out of time, but one thing I've been on lately is, as far as like Twitter, Facebook, social media goes, is I'm starting to cultivate a comparison between it and smoking. Like, I think, number one, it's addictive, and number two, it was cool. There's a coolness to it, but I don't think it'll always be cool because I think too many people dislike it and not enough people love it, and it's bad for you. So I do.
Wait, you're saying Twitter or social media?
I'm saying social media.
Sorry.
I'm saying social media for the most part.
Oh Lord, I cannot see this world without social media. Not that I want the world to keep going on this journey with it.
Totally understand. Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's an installation at this point. Yeah.
I feel like the economy would break if like social media was gone. So many people have, you know what I mean?
Right. I hear you. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll say is that I never hear anybody say, "Oh, I love social media." It's more like a source of shame. It's more like, "Oh, I heard something somewhere," and they heard it on social media, but they won't say that because they don't want to be known that they were there for 8 hours.
Oh, it's true. I don't know anyone that loves Twitter. It's just like it's just a part of our life. If you're
exactly. Yeah, it's like if somebody said, "Oh, I love Twitter," like I legitimately worry about the person.
Yeah, I'm calling someone.
I love Twitter.
Point. Okay, Al, we'll talk after this.
I could have counted down to you doing that.
We will talk.
Oh my God. Well, this is great. Well, so have we solved the world's problems?
I think so.
We did the best.
I think we did.
Yeah.
World peace.
So everything's good.
World peace right now after this is published. Yes.
Yeah.
So
or we
took a step in
make things worse. We either make things worse or it's going to be better. We'll see. Let the people decide.
We'll find out.
Well, I think you made things better because now I want to go buy some Depends underwear and send it to Vladimir Putin because I understand he's having issues there.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. So you're more compassionate now. That's
so you've made me more compassionate for someone that I never really thought about before.
I'll take that.
Okay.
I will take that.
Uh-huh. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a positive move.
Yes.
Well, again, we are out of time. I appreciate you being here, and of course, what can I finish it? But we had Brittany King and Mr. Eric Shapiro.
Thank you so much, Al and Eric. This is awesome.
Thank you for coming on.
Always.